I thought it was about time I bought a new label printer because they have evolved so greatly since the first ones that I used. And this is one of the older ones. It uses a small roll, 4-meter roll of very simple tape. In this case, it's a white paper tape that's thermally sensitive. And it's got a thermal print head, and when you type a message on it, say for instance, if I typed, say for instance, test, and here's one of the worst things about this one, the keyboard is not QWERTY. It's like this unusual A to E, F to J. It's not easy to type on. But I'll type a message, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's very simple. You print that off, the tape comes out the side. And what you end up with is either a plastic or a paper tape, paper in this instance, that has been thermally printed in the surface. Basically speaking, it's used heat to change the sort of colour of the paper, which is thermally sensitive. And it's got the usual thing for these labels. It's got a backing paper in 2 sections, so that when you fold it, you can take one section off, you can align it up, and then you can just take the other section off, and it just makes it easier to actually place it. It's functional, it's done its job. The new one I've got is miles ahead. So I'll put this one out of the way. And we'll take a look at this one now. What I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to show you how the tape mechanism works because it's very interesting. I'll print a label off right now. So for a start, we'll choose a font by pressing the font button up here. And there are 7 fonts, and it shows you the font. It's a much higher resolution than it used to be. So let's go for a big chunky font like this one. Size is automatic. It will scale it to the size of the tape, and if you use multiple lines, width, normal. So okay, I shall just print a simple thing that says test, and I'll just print that. So the first thing it does is it winds out a little bit of tape out the end, and then when you cut it, it will then wind out the main label. And a lot of people complain about the fact that it seems to waste that bit of tape at the beginning, but there is a reason for it. It's the fact that when this label comes out, and look, it's a nice rounded bold text. When this label comes out, the text is actually underneath the front. It's not on the surface, so you know if it's abraded in any way, it's not going to remove that text. Let me get a screwdriver and just scrub at it. It's not coming off because it is underneath that. The other label would have been destroyed by now. It's got the same system in the back for it's sort of half backing tapes. You can pull one half of it off, you can sit it in place and then hinge it up and you can get the other half off. And the laminating system is really, really interesting the way it's done because it's very, very clever. And to show you that, and also to explain why it wastes this little bit of tape at the beginning, I shall partially print something. I shall tell it to start printing that again. And it's saying, cut the tape. I'm actually going to turn it off. I'm not going to cut the tape. And I'll show you why. When you press this button at the end, the lid hinges off to reveal the tape cartridge. And if I pull this out, you'll see it has already started printing the text there. And the text, you'll notice that the yellow tape, I don't know if you can see this, but the text actually continues onto the clear top layer. And I'll show you what's happening there in a moment. Inside the unit, we have the thermal head and we have a lithium battery. That's quite nice. It offers you the option of putting in 6 AA cells or the lithium battery that's supplied with it in this kit. And it does come with a charger, a very generously sized 2 amp 12 volt charger with one horrible little design thing. This is a fairly standard jack connector, I think you will agree, but normally in these jack connectors, the middle pin, the internal pin, would be positive and the outer would be negative. In this case, the outer is positive and the middle is negative, which means if you plug this into other equipment or try to use another piece of equipment's power supply with this, there is the potential for damage to occur. So I'm going to take this cartridge to bits effectively to show you this. So let's see what I can do here. Actually, you know, I'll doodle something down first. That's the best bet. I'll show you, before I take this apart, because it will make more sense, I shall doodle what goes on here. So the print head is, basically speaking, lots of little resistors, really densely packed. Every single horizontal pixel on that print head is a little resistor, and the tracks come on a very fine ribbon cable up to that. As the tape passes over that, they heat up in sequence, but they're very, very small, so you get a low thermal mass, so they can heat up and cool down really quickly. And when they do so, there's a tape, and I'll draw this next bit then. So if this is the print head here, and that's the bit that actually prints, it doesn't stick up like that, it is really flat. There's a roller that rubs against that. And you've got a spool of pigment tape. So this is a clear tape that passes over that head and then is wound back into the machine. And it's a clear tape with a black pigment in the front. Then there's another roll, let's draw over here, of clear tape. Just clear, not sticky or anything like that, it's just a clear, simple tape, and it also gets fed by that pinch roller through there. Then, after that, there's another pinch roller, and this is the reason for the space here before the sort of cutter blade. And it's got a drive wheel, and there's another roll of tape. And this roll of tape is the coloured bit. This is the yellow bit, and it goes up there and past that. And as it unrolls, it's got the backing on it here, the peel-off backing, but that has two purposes. It's non-stick both sides. The side that's actually attached to the adhesive that you're going to stick it to the panel with, but also the other side is also non-stick because the front side of this tape, as it comes off that drum, is sticky. So as that unwinds, this tape, which is printed in the back of, and when that passes through, it doesn't print the text in the normal direction. It actually prints it in reverse. So for instance, that word test would be printed like this. It would be printed in reverse on the back of that tape. The S is always the hardest bit to think of in this aspect. So it prints it in reverse, and then as that passes through there, it sticks onto the adhesive side of the yellow tape that's coming through this. And because these pinch rollers are really tight, that squeezes it together and laminates it. And then you've got the guillotine mechanism. I think guillotine mechanism's after that. Yes, the guillotine mechanism is after that. It's locked at the moment, so nobody can get their fingers chopped. But it cuts the tape at this point. And it's this extra distance here of the lamination that is the fact that once it's finished printing the message, to get it to that blade, it has to feed it out beyond the lamination mechanism before it can cut the tape off. And that's why initially when you start again, it starts printing the message, goes up to the point of just before the blades, gets you to cut it, and that then cuts that little slug off, and then it prints the rest of the message and feeds it out so it can be cut so you get the full message. It's very clever, but don't take my word for it. Let me show you what's inside this cartridge. Hopefully not destroying it completely, because if you want to see the functions that this thing can do, I shall show you them afterwards, after I've done this. And that does mean that if I completely nuke this tape, if I ruin it, I'm trying to separate the two layers here. Oh, it's very hard to separate because they are so close together. So here's the clear tape. Can you see that? So that's the clear tape that's not sticky at all, but you can see if I pull this back, you can see that it's printed on the back, and as it goes through that roller, this yellow tape is very sticky, and it's just so sticky it's stuck already. And as it goes through, it laminates that on. So the text that was printed on the back to front is now the correct way round, but it's actually looks as though it's the correct way round because you're reading it from the front, but it is actually printed in the back of this clear tape. And it means that for all these units that print black on multiple colours of tape, the only difference is the coloured tape that's actually coming out here. In this case it's yellow, but it could also be green or blue. The pigment tape, which I'm just in the process of destroying with the adhesive. Yeah, let's get that out there. That's absolutely terrible. I'm just ruining this cartridge. But if that's a clear tape, here is the pigment tape in here, and it's basically just a clear tape. And if I was to try and wind that back out, it should have the previous text sort of pulled off it. Is it going to come out? I don't think it is. It is coming out. And you can see where, can you see that the text has been transferred, the pigment in the front has been transferred onto the clear film. And that's the only bit that actually gets wound back into this machine. I see I have actually broken a little bit here, but not to worry, it'll be fine, I'm sure. Yes, but anyway, I shall pause momentarily now I've shown this. I shall cut that bit clear, and I shall try and put this back together in a sensible manner. I'm tempted to open the cartridge. Hold on, let's see if I can open this cartridge. This is a terrible idea. This is the kiss of death. The cartridge is never going back together after this. There's a small piece of grey plastic attached to that. I don't think there's supposed to be a small piece of grey plastic attached to it. I think I've already broken a bit the cartridge, but we'll see what happens. Rather disappointing. This is the proper full cost manufacturer's cartridge. I could have done it with one of the cheaper ones you can get from China. The ones from China, it says in the back, and here's the instructions that give the clue. If film ribbon loosing, please tighten the cassette gear by a finger as shown in the picture. What they mean is if this black film comes out, you can tighten it by winding this round, this roller here, in a particular direction. I'm not really sure. I'm probably unravelling lots of it in the machine. Tell you what, give me a moment. I'm going to try and get this apart because I think there's lots and lots of clips. But so give me a moment and I'll get them out and I'll be back in a jiffy. One mass destruction later, let's take a look at the inside. So we've got the little pigment roller here. It's very small because it's a very thin film. And it basically passes over the area of the print head, comes back over, and then there's this little take-up spool which goes anti-clockwise to actually wind the material off that. And when the machine's actually running, it's got a drive on there that will actually wind that round just to take that slack in and pull it off that roll. We've got the clear layer here, which is fed up, and it's the bit that gets printed on and then it goes out and gets laminated onto this other one. And then the reason this has got these little blue sleeves, this is a piece of white tape. I didn't use my yellow cartridge because it was going to get, I want to demonstrate some of the printing features afterwards, and it's also expensive, and these are the cheapy clones, so we'll use these. So this is the white tape version, and it's sticky on both sides, and the reason that it's got the little discs like this is simply because it's adhesive on both sides. It's to stop it sticking to the cases in storage if any of this sort of adhesive oozes out the side. So that is interesting. So that's the bit that gets laminated there. At this point that is still... Oh, the adhesive's on the inside. Okay, so the outside of that is the side that actually gets peeled off to stick on the panel. Okay, that's interesting. I see one of the pins has been broken in the process of me opening it. I wonder if this will still work. Let's try that. Let's put it back together. Is it going to go back together? I wonder. Oh, maybe it would help if I put that one the right way around. They're fairly complex. The official cartridges are quite expensive. There's about 8 meters in them, except for the one that's got heat shrink in it. I'll talk about the heat shrink afterwards. I have ordered a roll of the heat shrink one, I think, from one of the Chinese sellers. Oh, is this... Have I just mashed that just a little bit? No, I think that's more or less it. I don't think it's going to clip back together fully. It's looking pretty promising. Another thing that happens when you put these in, there are little recesses cut in here. And if we compare the recesses on the larger tape in here, you can see it's got 2 indents and this has got 1. That tells it what size this is. And that when you sit this in, it's also got spacers, so it sits up to the top of the unit. It doesn't sit down right to the bottom. I don't think it sits right down to the bottom. Let's put this lid on and see what happens if that actually feeds and works. So I shall chop that. Let's turn it on alphabet because I was just actually running the yellow tape out to test it. Let's print that off. Oh, that did not sound that happy. But it did print it. Yeah, I think that might be slightly knackered. One thing I did notice, the original tape, the yellow tape, has a very dark pigment. The clone, because I've got another cartridge here with the clear tape, so it prints transparent labels. The pigment on it was actually just that little bit less dense. So let's put this in. And at this point in time, what's times the video at? I may just stop and start it again, just as a precaution against it taking a wee chunk as it stops and starts itself. So now I'll show you the features of how this thing actually prints labels if you're interested to see what it can do, because it's actually very capable. So let's start by looking at some of the standard features. So say for instance you just want a standard label. You've got the choice of font. I'll go for a fairly bold font. I'll go for that one again. We'll select the one that's fairly chunky and bold because I like that one. Okay, it's not necessarily the best choice, and I'll just type test. So this will size it to the tape. So if I press the button now, it'll do that wee cut off the start bit for the laminator, and then it'll print out a nice bold test label. If you wanted multiple lines, say for instance I wanted to have 2 lines of text, I can use the carriage return and I can go down and I can type test again underneath, and this time it will just scale the text to fit the 2 lines. So in this instance it's a much shorter label because it's scaled the text down. Other features, if you wanted to say then add a barcode onto that, you can press the barcode button. It will give you a choice, say code 39, code 128, EAN-8. Let's go with code 39, small on, it puts the number underneath the barcode. You've got that option of that or not. So let's say OK, and then you can type just a random number in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now it will add that barcode in on that label. So let's see how this goes. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. I've not tried this particular feature. Looks promising. Okay, so it's printed a line of text and then it's done test and then it's got the barcode after that. The other option there would have been, if I go back the way, hold on, I'm just going to try this out. If I move to the right, I think I can add the barcode in afterwards, although I'm not sure. I've not played about with this too much. Tell you what, instead of making a dick of myself by getting it wrong, I shall escape out of that. I'll just do a plain barcode. Text and format, I'll just do a simple barcode like, say for instance, I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. Okay, and this time it's probably going to print it on one large label. It's printed out as a single large barcode. Other things, and this is a great feature, this one, it does distribution board labels. So say for instance I press this, you tell it the width between each module, each circuit breaker. So it comes up default 15 millimeters. It's coming up number of blocks, so that's the equivalent of say 4 circuit breakers, and it lets you choose the separator and the orientation of the text. So if I now go like this, okay, I can type in circuit 1, CCT space 1, and then I can press the right arrow to go to the next one and go CCT circuit 2 and keep doing that. Oop, I should have typed CCT there, but it doesn't matter. 3 and then CCT 4. So that's circuit 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's see if I can go back and correct that one. I think I can. I can. It's very versatile. It's chalk and cheese compared to the old one I used to use. So let's put another C in there. Yep. And when I print this off now, it will print one continuous label that then goes across the circuit breakers, and it's got the little alignment dashes on it there, and it has the designations. And you can print multiple lines of text. You could have ring circuit 1 lighting, upstairs lighting, and so on. You could just, or an immersion heater, you could actually just name them accordingly to what the circuit breakers are, and you can effectively print this strip for the whole length of the distribution board. It's quite a smart feature. Next is cable markers. Now this is where you have the option that you can print on the heat shrink cable sleeve, but I think it prints the outside. I'm sure I've ordered one of those. If it comes, I'll show you what it looks like. But so let's delete that and we'll go to the marker. So the first thing here is we've got the option of a flexible identifier, which is a cable that wraps around the outside of the cable, or the heat shrink tube. We'll go for the, since I've not got the heat shrink tube, which will just be a straight line, I'll go with this. It asks you the diameter of the cable. It lets you choose the diameter or a length of a label, or if it's a particular, if it's a Cat 5 cable or a coax or a American wire gauge. But let's go with diameter, and the diameter of this cable is 7mm. And if I choose repeat on or off, without repeat, it will just print it once. With repeat, it will print it all around the cable. So now I can go, okay. I can then type in circuit 3, and I can print that. And what will happen now, it'll print circuit 3 multiple times, and it'll print it in such a way that when I take the backing tape off, I can then, and that's the fumbly bit, is always getting the backing tape off, particularly when you're not really got proper fingernails. This is where I normally use my little long nose pliers or snips to grip it. I'm not doing very well here. Wow, I'd be a great salesman for this label maker. Oh, cost. Incidentally, the list price is normally apparently £100, but it always seems to be on offer about £50. So this then wraps round the cable like that. So the target price in the UK from Screwfix and Toolstation and places like that is about £50. So as you can see, that is now wrapped round and it's got that labelling all around it. But there is another option. You can choose, if I then cancel that, and I press shift at the same time as I do that, it does a flag. So it's making the flag length 30mm. It's going to put a marker in the middle. Cable diameter will go down to 7mm for that. That looks okay. And again, I'll go circuit 3. So CIRCUIT 3. And this time when I press the print, and keep in mind with this one, you could print multiple lines of text because it's much more generous in terms of size. It prints a double-sided flag, and when you strip this one back, it has a little marker in the middle of it, so that when you, just give me a second to get this off, line it up. And this is where I'll screw it up, isn't it? When you line it up, that little line there with the cable, and fold it round, you can then fold the flag onto itself. Let's see if I can mess this up. I'm so used to doing it with insulation tape and then marking it with a pen. But this is a much more professional way. I completely screwed that up. But you know, you get the drift. It's got the designation on both sides. That would have looked neater if I'd actually lined it up properly. But that is how it lined up. With the heat shrink, it does just print it as a sort of single line of text, and the idea is that then you can slip the heat shrink on and shrink it down. That means you need access to that cable before you put it on. This can be added afterwards, and also, if you use the standard labelling to print this off, you can also slide a bit of ordinary heat shrink over the top of that and shrink it down onto that. I think that would work just fine. So it's a very interesting, it's very good. Oh, other things, it's got loads of symbols. So if I cancel that, if I go back to just ordinary text, let's escape out of that. You can add symbols like, press the symbol here, go to miscellaneous. Okay, it's got various sets of symbols. So it's got things like the chemistry symbols, it's got the toilet symbols and things like that. So I'll say okay, and then after that I can add, oh, it's actually still set to cable flag, that's not good. Let's go back to this. Okay. So then you could have just text and image here. And the resolution of this is pretty good. It's got a good number of thermal print heads, so it prints out a decent sized label with good graphics on it. It's pretty smart. It's a neat little thing. The original cartridges are pretty expensive for this thing. It seems to vary in the sort of £10 or higher region, but online, because it's such a popular unit, the Chinese have copied the cartridges en masse. Ultimately, if you were doing mission critical jobs, I would recommend using Brother's original label materials and just learning how to use them efficiently. But for general tasks, the Chinese ones would probably be okay. They'd probably do okay as long as they weren't being exposed to ultraviolet or excessive wear, or there wasn't an issue that if the adhesive failed and the tag dropped off, it would be some sort of major issue. But it's very neat. It's good. I'm trying to think of any other features that are worth mentioning. You can store favourite labels. You can serialize numbers. If you want, say for instance you had a label with serial number, and then you start off, you type in the first serial number, like say 1000, you can then serialize it by pressing this button. It lets you select the first and last digit of that's going to be incremented and then how they're going to be incremented, and it will let you then print subsequently sort of serial number labeled tags. It's very good. Oh, and for the international market, say for instance, let's clear the text. If you type in any character like A, and then you press this button down here, it lets you put the accents on the umlauty type things. And it's got quite a range of them, so you just go through until you get the one you want. And when you've got it, you press OK, and then you can move on to the next character. So it allows for all the different characteristics of the European alphabets, really. It's very good. I'm impressed with this. It's going to take a bit of getting used to, but having said that, it comes in a big case. It comes in a huge case, a bit too big actually. But it comes with this really nicely laid out, really straight to the point manual that you can just go down, say for instance cable flag, it shows you which ones to actually, it shows you how to choose that setting and the sort of effect you're going to get. It's very good. It's a really well thought out printer, but then it is just aimed at the sort of professional electrical installation industry where marking is very common these days. There's a lot more labels being put in stuff. So far, I'm impressed. I'll see how these labels go, the sort of imported labels, particularly one I've just mutilated. But yeah, it's looking good. I'm liking this so far.